Hi, everybody. Thanks for joining us. My name is Trevor Bachnight. I'm a volunteer at the Sumter County Museum, and I'm here today with Mr. Charles Broadwell, who is the curator and archivist at the museum. And he's going to talk to us a little bit about a miniature painting of Thomas Sumter by Sarah Goodridge, a famous American portrait artist. So, first of all, just tell us a little bit about what you do here at the museum, what your job is.
Okay, well, first of all, thank you for letting me be here, Trevor, and interviewing. And what my job is to take care of the collection of the museum, which is quite extensive. But I log things into the museum, I put them in our database, and responsible for taking care of them. Humidity, make sure they're climate controlled areas that they stay in, and just generally protect them until we get ready to put them on display. Our collection is so large that we can't put everything on display all the time, which is what we're trying to do, is introduce the public to some of the items we have, this being the first one. But this is an oil on ivory miniature by Sarah Goodridge, who made her living painted miniatures. This is not thought to be from life. It was painted in 1825, some 7 years before Thomas Sumter died, and this is of a much younger man. So she probably painted from a likeness she had. But Sarah Goodridge lived in Boston. That was her basis. And she was born and lived her entire life in Massachusetts. But she was good enough so that she was able to support a niece and her mother and herself by her miniatures. And she was a good friend of Daniel Webster, and she painted a number of notable people, one being Daniel Webster. She painted several times, and she painted Gilbert Stuart. But her most famous piece, which is in the Metropolitan Museum of Art, is called Beauty Revealed, which she painted for Daniel Webster and gave it to him, and the family kept it for many, many years before donating it to the Metropolitan Museum. But this particular miniature was purchased in 2003 by a group of Sumter businessmen headed up by Phil Edwards. And they purchased it from an art dealer in Hartsville and in turn donated it to the museum, which we're very pleased to have because it's enhanced our collection greatly. And since it is a Thomas Sumter, which is a big part of the mission of the museum to gather artifacts from Lee County, Sumter County, and Clarendon County, it fits into that perfectly. And we're pleased to have it, and glad that we have this opportunity to show it to the public.
Right, and how did they become aware that it was available?
Phil was contacted. They knew of his connection with the museum and his interest in items related to Sumter County. So they contacted him. Actually, the art dealer in Hartsville, in Tennessee, excuse me, I think I said Hartsville, but it was Tennessee, bought it on auction in Ohio. So in this case, a famous person. She painted a lot of people, like a gentleman, a lady, just those names on it with no name on it. So people at the time collected these as artifacts around the house, decoration, and that's probably why she did this one.
Okay.
Which is probably why it came from, not from him in life, but from a likeness of him.
All right, and you were saying that the painting was done in oil on ivory. Was that a fairly common technique?
Yeah, for the miniature artist, it was common. Those are thin sheets of ivory that they used, and it was quite common medium to work in. A lot of our South Carolina miniaturists worked in that, as well as all over the nation, really.
Well, it seems to have held up very well in terms of the color. It hasn't been restored or anything like that. Just
this has not been touched.
Wow.
Yeah.
All right, and so a little bit about the artist. I know she painted on did some other things like painting on birch bark.
In the beginning, she she had very few lessons. I mentioned Gilbert Stewart earlier. He helped her some, but she had very few lessons. It was all natural. But when she was growing up, her family couldn't afford paper for her to draw on, so she used two things. She used birch bark, and she used sand to draw in.
Oh, interesting.
And used a sharp stick or a feather of some sort of quill to do her drawing, and that was her beginning. But her sister, who was Elizabeth, she also was a miniature artist, so it ran in the family. Both of them were quite successful, what they did.
That's really interesting. And she painted, maybe with did she use something other than a brush to paint the miniatures, that like a stick or a pen or something like that? No?
She used a brush on the miniatures.
All right. And so, talk a little bit about Thomas Sumter himself. I know he was a famous person nationwide, became a senator and after his military career and lived to a ripe old age.
Yes, he was. He was our longest surviving Revolutionary War general, and he was a man, either you were for him or you were against him. There was no middle ground with him. And but he was a brigadier general that was in charge of the South Carolina militia during the war at one time, and he was he fought mostly against Colonel Tarleton, and but he was in this area for most of the time. He was, of course, associated with Francis Marion and all the notables of the war, General Richard Richardson from down around Remini. But he was the longest surviving one, and he ended up being in charge of South Carolina militia during the Revolutionary War. And he was attacked Fort Watson down on Santee around Manning. He fought on the other side of the river over in Calhoun County, and he was, after the war, he was a strong politician, was elected to senator in Washington, and was a force in politics, both in South Carolina and national politics, for really right until his death.
And so he was a popular figure, and probably would have been a lot of demand for a painting like this.
Yeah, yes, America was very patriotic, and he would have been much sought after to have a likeness hanging in the home. It's a matter of prestige, social standing to have his image around.
All right. Well, thank you very much for telling us about this unique piece of history. I know the museum's had this since about 2003, and it has a lot of other items of historic interest, and I can't wait to get into the rest of these with you. This is a continuing series, and we'll look forward to what you bring us next time.
Okay, thank you, Trevor. I've enjoyed it.